He bought a cabin for 5 cents, then uncovered a deadly $100 million conspiracy. The auctioneer's voice cracked like a whip across the empty courthouse steps, but the crowd had dwindled to just a handful of disinterested faces. Marcus Stone watched as property after property sold for hundreds while people shuffled away with each passing lot. Then came Lot 23, a cabin on Pine Ridge Creek. Starting bid, 5 cents. 5 cents. The auctioneer looked around, visibly embarrassed. "Do I hear 5 cents for the old Morrison place?" Marcus raised his hand, driven more by dark curiosity than any real intention. The hammer fell before he could think twice. "Sold to the gentleman in the blue shirt." As he approached the clerk to pay his nickel, Marcus caught fragments of a whispered conversation behind him. One man wore an expensive coat despite the scorching heat. The other kept glancing nervously toward the courthouse doors. "Should we warn him?" the nervous one hissed. "Warn him about what?" the well-dressed man replied, though his predatory gaze tracked Marcus's every movement. "About what happened to the last 4 people who tried to claim that cursed place." The well-dressed man's grip tightened on his companion's arm. "Keep your mouth shut, Billy. Some graves are better left undisturbed." Marcus felt ice water run through his veins despite the brutal afternoon sun. He'd just purchased property sight unseen for 5 cents, and strangers were discussing previous owners in the past tense, permanently past tense. As he handed over his nickel, Thomas Rivers, the county clerk, stared at him with something that looked disturbingly like pity. "You absolutely certain about this, Marcus? That place has been sitting empty for damn good reasons. But the deed was already prepared. The cabin on Pine Ridge Creek belonged to him now." What Marcus couldn't see was the figure watching from the shadows across the street, someone who knew exactly why that cabin had been priced to vanish and why every previous owner had suffered such conveniently fatal accidents. The 5-cent purchase was about to unleash hell, but not in any way anyone could have predicted. 3 days later, Marcus stood before his 5-cent investment, seriously questioning his sanity. The cabin tilted like a ship in a storm, its windows sealed with warped planks that had turned gray from weather and neglect. Weeds erupted through the rotting porch boards, and the roof sagged under years of accumulated decay. He forced his way through the jungle of overgrown vegetation, glass crunching beneath his boots. The front door hung at a sickening angle on corroded hinges, opening into impenetrable darkness. Stepping inside, the floorboards screamed under his weight. Dust particles swirled in the thin shafts of light penetrating the boarded windows like ghosts dancing in a tomb. "What the hell did I just buy?" he muttered, running his palm along the roughly hewn walls. The interior felt impossibly cramped. One main room dominated by a stone fireplace, a microscopic kitchen with a bone-dry pump, and what appeared to be a bedroom behind a partially collapsed doorway. But something was fundamentally wrong. Marcus paced the room, counting steps, 20 feet from front wall to back. But when he'd walked the exterior perimeter, he'd measured nearly 35 feet. 15 feet were missing. He examined the rear wall with growing intensity, his fingers tracing the rough timber. Most planks ran vertically, but near the corner, he discovered a section where the grain ran horizontally. The wood was a different shade, newer, as if added much later. When he pressed against this section, it yielded slightly under pressure. His pulse exploded as understanding hit him. The missing 15 feet weren't missing, they were hidden. As he searched frantically for the mechanism to open what was clearly a concealed entrance, the unmistakable thunder of approaching horses made him freeze. Through a crack in the boarded window, he watched a rider in a black coat dismount and secure his horse to a dead oak. Marcus recognized him instantly, the well-dressed man from the courthouse auction, the one who'd ordered his companion to stay silent about the previous buyers. The stranger stopped just outside the entrance. "I know you're inside, Marcus Stone. We have urgent business regarding what you've discovered." But Marcus hadn't discovered anything yet. How could this stranger know about a find that hadn't happened? Marcus pressed himself against the wall beside the hidden panel, his breathing shallow and rapid. The stranger's boots thundered on the porch as he approached the doorway. "My name is Victor Kane," the man announced, his voice carrying lethal authority mixed with calculated caution. "I represent certain interests that have been monitoring this property for a very long time." "What kind of interests?" Marcus called back, fighting to keep his voice steady. The kind that ensure dangerous secrets stay buried, Mr. Stone. The kind that have kept this cabin empty for 18 years. Victor stepped through the doorway, his sharp eyes immediately scanning the interior. But you've already begun investigating, haven't you? Already noticed the walls don't match the foundation's measurements. Marcus's stomach plummeted. This man knew about the hidden chamber. Victor moved with the fluid confidence of someone intimately familiar with the cabin's secrets. The Morrison family constructed this place in desperate haste, Mr. Stone. They had something extraordinarily valuable they needed to conceal, and time was running out fast. What happened to them? They became greedy. Victor's gaze locked onto the section of horizontal planking Marcus had been examining. Just like the 4 men who purchased this place after them, each one believed they could locate what was hidden here and claim it for themselves. And what happened to those 4 men? Victor's smile held no warmth whatsoever. Accidents occur with disturbing frequency in isolated areas like this. Hunting mishaps, falls from cliffs, drownings in the rushing creek. The wilderness shows no mercy to those who venture into forbidden territory. The threat couldn't have been clearer, but it only strengthened Marcus's resolve. If something valuable remained hidden here, Victor's presence proved it was still undiscovered. "Why warn me?" Marcus demanded. "Why not just arrange my accident too?" "Because you're different, Mr. Stone. You're not some treasure-hunting drifter or desperate fortune seeker. You're a respected local man with a reputation for honor and discretion. My employers believe you might be reasonable." "Your employers?" "People who understand that certain secrets become exponentially more valuable when they remain secret." Victor reached into his coat and withdrew a heavy leather pouch. $1,000, Mr. Stone, more than you'd earn in 5 years. Simply walk away and forget you ever owned this place. Marcus stared at the pouch. $1,000 would transform his entire existence. But something about Victor's barely controlled desperation told him that whatever lay hidden in these walls was worth infinitely more. "I need time to consider this," Marcus said carefully. Victor's expression turned predatory. "Time is a luxury you may not possess, Mr. Stone. My employer's patience has very strict limits." As Victor turned to leave, he paused at the threshold. One final warning. The Morrison family didn't just hide something here. They died protecting it. Ask yourself whether 5 cents was truly worth your life. But what Victor failed to notice was how Marcus's hand was already working the hidden panel, or how the wood had begun shifting under his relentless pressure. Marcus waited until Victor's horse vanished down the trail before returning to the concealed panel. His hands trembled as he manipulated the wood, part terror, part electric excitement coursing through his system. If Victor was prepared to offer $1,000 just to walk away, what lay behind this wall was worth a fortune. The panel suddenly released with a soft click, swinging inward on hidden hinges. Cool air rushed out, carrying the musty scent of spaces that had been sealed for decades. Marcus peered into the darkness and saw a narrow chamber, barely wide enough for a person to stand. He struck a match, and the flame revealed shelves carved directly from the living rock. On these shelves sat dozens of leather-bound ledgers, rolled maps, and small wooden strongboxes. But what stopped his heart was the sight of metal bars stacked like cordwood along the back wall, gleaming dully in the flickering light. Marcus lifted one of the bars, gasping at its unexpected weight. The metal was soft yellow gold, pure enough that his fingernail left a clear mark. More gold than existed in most territorial banks, stacked casually against the stone walls. He opened one of the ledgers with shaking fingers. The pages contained meticulous handwriting recording dates, extraction amounts, and geographical coordinates. But the dates made no sense. They extended back nearly 25 years, long before the Morrison family supposedly owned this cabin. Mining operations, Pine Ridge Valley, monthly extractions. Marcus read aloud, trying to decipher the entries. One name appeared obsessively throughout the ledger: Samuel Morrison. According to the dates, Samuel had been recording gold extractions for years before he officially purchased this property. The cabin wasn't just a hiding place, it was the nerve center of a massive illegal mining operation. Marcus unrolled one of the maps, spreading it across a wooden crate. It detailed the entire creek system with dozens of marks indicating mining sites. Red X's marked depleted claims, while blue circles showed active operations. But what made his hands shake was the notation at the bottom: Estimated remaining value, $3.7 million in untapped reserves. $3.7 million. The thunderous sound of multiple horses approaching made him freeze. This time they were moving fast, with deadly purpose. Marcus quickly rolled up the map and grabbed the most important ledger, shoving them inside his shirt. He swung the panel closed just as angry voices filled the cabin. "He was here," Victor's voice carried clearly. "The dust has been disturbed, and there are fresh boot prints." "Then he's found it," a second voice replied, rougher, more dangerous than Victor's, "just like the others did. But Stone's different. He might still respond to reason. The boss doesn't want to gamble on that possibility, not after what happened in Nevada territory." Marcus pressed himself against the wall, holding his breath. Through gaps in the floorboards, he could see boots moving around the main room. "Search everything," Victor commanded. "If he's opened the cache, there will be evidence." But as the men searched above him, Marcus realized something that chilled his soul. They weren't just looking for signs of his discovery. They were hunting him. And from their conversation, he now understood that his predecessors hadn't died in accidents. They'd been murdered in cold blood. Marcus remained statue still as the men searched above him. Through the floor gaps, he counted 5 pairs of boots, including Victor's polished ones. The rough-voiced man appeared to be giving orders to the others. "Jake, check the rear wall. Sam, examine every loose floorboard. If Stone found the cache, he would have left traces." One set of boots approached directly above where Marcus crouched. He could hear hands running along the wooden panels, testing for movement. His heart pounded so violently he was certain they would detect it. "Boss, this section feels different," the voice above him reported. "Different how?" "The wood grain runs the wrong direction, and there's definitely cold air coming from somewhere." Marcus closed his eyes, knowing his hiding place was about to be exposed. But then Victor spoke, his voice sharp with absolute authority. "Leave it alone, Jake. We're not here to demolish walls. We're here to locate Stone. But if this is where—" "I said leave it." Victor's tone cut like a blade. "Our employer wants this handled with absolute discretion. Destroying the cabin attracts unwanted attention." The boots moved away, and Marcus exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. But his relief evaporated when he heard the rough-voiced man speak again. "What about the old woman, old?"
"What about her? Ruth Hawkins has been asking questions around town about who purchased this place. She knew the Morrisons better than anybody." Victor was silent for a long moment. How well did she know them? Well enough to know their darkest secrets. Word is she's been warning folks that whoever bought this cabin is walking straight into a death trap. Then perhaps Mrs. Hawkins requires a visit as well. The casual way Victor discussed threatening an elderly woman made Marcus's blood boil. Whatever was hidden in this cabin, these men were prepared to kill innocent people to protect it. And now an elderly woman was in mortal danger because of his 5-cent purchase. "Mount up," Victor ordered. "We'll position ourselves at the creek crossing. Stone has to use that trail eventually." The boots moved toward the door, but Marcus heard one man hesitate. "Victor," the rough voice called quietly, "what if he doesn't appear? What if he's already fled the territory? Then we'll hunt him down. Men like Stone don't abandon property, especially property they've paid for. He'll return." The cabin fell silent except for the sound of departing horses. Marcus waited several more minutes before emerging from the hidden chamber. The ledger pressed against his chest felt heavier now that he understood what it represented. Evidence of a conspiracy that had already claimed 4 lives. But as he prepared to escape through the back of the cabin, he spotted something that made his blood freeze. Carved into the doorframe, almost invisible in the weathered wood, were 4 sets of initials. J. M. 1844. T. R. 1848. H. C. 1853. And X. D. L. 1859. The previous owners who'd died in accidents. They'd each left their mark, perhaps knowing they were walking into mortal danger. Marcus pulled out his knife and carefully carved his own initials below theirs. MS1862. If he was going to die for this secret, at least someone would know he'd been here. But first, he had to warn Ruth Hawkins. If these killers were targeting her, she deserved to know what was coming. Marcus slipped out the back of the cabin and navigated through the dense forest toward town, avoiding the main trail where Victor's assassins waited in ambush. The ledger and map pressed against his ribs with each step, constant reminders of the lethal danger he'd stumbled into. Ruth Hawkins lived in a modest house on the town's outskirts, surrounded by a garden that had seen better decades. As Marcus approached, he found her on the front porch, rocking slowly in a weather-beaten chair. She looked up as he climbed the steps, her sharp eyes absorbing his disheveled appearance. "You're the fool who bought the Morrison place," she said without any preamble. "Yes, ma'am, and I believe you might be in serious danger because of it." Ruth's rocking chair stopped moving. "What kind of danger?"
The kind that involves armed killers asking questions about what you know. Marcus glanced around nervously. "They mentioned your name specifically, Mrs. Hawkins. They're coming here." The elderly woman stood with surprising agility. "Then we'd better talk quickly. Come inside." Her parlor was cramped but immaculate, filled with the accumulated treasures of a long life. Ruth gestured for Marcus to sit while she moved to the window, peering cautiously through the curtains. "Samuel Morrison wasn't the original owner of that cabin," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "My deceased husband constructed it in 1838 as headquarters for his mining operation. The creek was rich with gold in those days, and Benjamin knew every profitable spot along that waterway. Your husband was Benjamin Hawkins for 34 years, until the fever claimed him." Ruth's eyes grew distant with memory. "Samuel purchased the mining claims from me after Benjamin's death, but he was never satisfied with what he discovered in the creek. He started excavating where he had no legal right to dig." "What do you mean?" "There was a reason Benjamin only worked specific sections of the creek, Mr. Stone. Our legitimate claims belong to us, but the richest deposits belong to the territorial government. Samuel decided that legal technicality didn't apply to him." Marcus felt the pieces clicking into place with terrifying clarity. He was stealing government gold for nearly 18 years. Samuel and his partners would mine the government sections under cover of darkness, then hide their stolen treasure in that secret chamber Benjamin had built for our own modest discoveries. Ruth moved away from the window, her expression grave. "But governments never forget when people steal from them, especially not $3.7 million worth." The exact amount Marcus had seen documented on the map. The government dispatched men to recover it. Men like Victor Kane. They've been watching that cabin for years, waiting for someone to lead them directly to the gold. Every time someone purchased the property, they assumed that person was connected to Samuel's operation. And they murdered them for it. They eliminated them because they couldn't risk word spreading about a government gold theft involving too many powerful people who couldn't survive the scandal. The thunder of approaching horses made them both freeze. Through the window, Marcus could see 5 riders advancing up the road, Victor leading the charge. "Back door," Ruth whispered urgently. "There's a hidden trail through my garden that leads to the creek. Follow it downstream until you reach the abandoned sawmill." "What about you?" "I'm an old woman, Mr. Stone. They won't harm me unless absolutely necessary." She pressed a small brass key into his palm. "This opens a safety deposit box at Garrett's bank, Benjamin's insurance policy in case something like this ever surfaced." As the killers drew closer, Ruth pushed Marcus toward the rear of the house. "Whatever you do, never return to that cabin. Victor's patience is nearly exhausted." Marcus crept through Ruth's garden as heavy boots echoed from the front porch. He could hear Victor's voice, polite but loaded with menace, as he interrogated the elderly woman about her conversations regarding the cabin. The trail through the garden was overgrown but navigable, winding down toward Pine Ridge Creek through a grove of ancient oaks. As Marcus made his way downstream, he clutched the small key Ruth had entrusted to him, wondering what Benjamin Hawkins's insurance policy might contain. The abandoned sawmill sat where the creek bent sharply east, its water wheel motionless and partially collapsed from neglect. Marcus had passed this place hundreds of times, but never paid attention. Now, hiding behind its crumbling walls, he extracted the ledger he'd taken from the cabin. Reading by the dying light, he began to grasp the full scope of Samuel's criminal enterprise. The meticulous records revealed not just gold extraction, but payment schedules to territorial officials, shipping arrangements, and most damning of all, a comprehensive list of government employees who had received bribes to ignore the illegal mining. Names he recognized. Important names, asterisk. Men who now held positions of tremendous power in the territorial government. No wonder Victor was so desperately determined to recover this evidence. The scandal would obliterate careers and potentially topple the entire territorial administration. But as Marcus studied the ledger, one entry seized his attention. Final shipment prepared. Cash sealed pending collection. BH maintains secondary records as insurance. BH, Benjamin Hawkins. Ruth's husband, had kept his own documentation of Samuel's illegal activities. Marcus understood now why Ruth had given him the bank key. Benjamin had recorded everything, creating evidence that could either destroy Victor's employers or make the right person incredibly wealthy. The sound of approaching hoofbeats shattered his concentration. Through gaps in the sawmill's walls, he watched Victor and his killers riding along the creek, searching with methodical precision. They would locate him within minutes. But as Marcus prepared to flee deeper into the wilderness, he noticed something that forced him to reconsider everything. One of Victor's men carried a leather satchel, and from how protectively he guarded it, Marcus suspected it contained gold. Payment for services rendered. These men weren't government agents trying to recover stolen property. They were thieves planning to claim the gold for themselves while murdering anyone who knew about Samuel's operation. The realization changed absolutely everything. If Victor intended to steal the gold rather than return it to the government, then Marcus wasn't just fighting for survival. He was the only person standing between Victor and a fortune built on innocent blood. "Spread out!" Victor's voice carried clearly across the water. "He can't have traveled far, and he's carrying evidence we cannot afford to lose." Marcus slipped deeper into the sawmill ruins, his mind racing. Ruth was right about avoiding the cabin, but she was wrong about one crucial thing. Victor wouldn't leave her alive, not when she knew about Benjamin's insurance policy. As the search party closed in, Marcus made a desperate decision. Instead of running, he would return, not to the cabin, but to town, to Garrett's bank. If Benjamin Hawkins had documented Samuel's crimes, then somewhere in that evidence was proof of Victor's real identity and the names of his accomplices. Information that could expose the entire murderous conspiracy. But first, he had to survive long enough to reach the bank. Marcus waited until Victor's search party moved further downstream before emerging from the sawmill ruins. The sun was setting, painting the sky blood red as he made his way back toward town through the dense forest, staying far from any main roads. Garrett's bank occupied the corner of Main Street, a solid brick fortress that projected permanence and security. But as Marcus approached, something made his blood turn to ice. Victor's horse stood tied to the hitching post outside. Through the bank's front window, he could see Victor inside, engaged in heated conversation with Edgar Garrett, the bank president. The discussion appeared increasingly aggressive, with Victor gesturing emphatically, while Garrett shook his head with stubborn determination. Marcus circled to the building's rear, searching for another entrance. A small window near the alley was partially open for ventilation against the day's oppressive heat. He could hear voices from inside. "I don't care what authority you claim to represent," Garrett was saying firmly. "I will not open that safety deposit box without proper legal documentation or the key holder present. Mr. Garrett, you're obstructing territorial business. The contents of Benjamin Hawkins's lockbox constitute evidence in a federal investigation. Then bring me a warrant signed by a territorial judge, Mr. Kane. Until then, that box remains sealed." Marcus smiled grimly. The old banker possessed more courage than Victor had anticipated, but his relief vanished when he heard Victor's tone turn lethal. "I'd hate for anything unfortunate to happen to your bank, Edgar. Buildings can be so vulnerable to fire, especially old ones constructed entirely of wood and brick." The threat was crystal clear, but Garrett held his ground. "Are you threatening me, sir?" "I'm simply observing the risks of conducting business in a frontier town where accidents happen with such tragic frequency." Marcus knew he had to act before Victor escalated the situation to violence. He climbed through the back window as silently as possible, finding himself in a storage room filled with ledgers and document boxes. Through the partially open door, he could see into the main banking floor where Victor loomed menacingly over Garrett's desk. Moving with extreme caution, Marcus made his way to the vault area where the safety deposit boxes were secured. Benjamin Hawkins's lockbox was number 23, the same number as the cabin lot at the auction. Even in concealing his insurance policy, the old miner had maintained his sense of irony. The key Ruth had entrusted to him turned smoothly in the lock. Inside the box, Marcus found exactly what he'd prayed for: detailed records of Samuel Morrison's mining operation, complete with dates, extraction amounts, and most crucially, the real names and government positions of everyone involved in the conspiracy. But what made him catch his breath was a letter addressed simply, "To whoever discovers this first." Benjamin Hawkins had anticipated this exact moment. "If you're reading this," the letter began, "then Samuel's stolen gold has finally surfaced, and dangerous men are attempting to claim it. The gold rightfully belongs to the territorial government, but the men hunting it are not government agents. They are criminals led by a man calling himself Victor Kane, whose real name is Vincent Carver, a former cavalry deserter wanted for theft and murder in 4 territories." Marcus felt the final pieces slam into place. Victor wasn't working for the government. He was a wanted criminal, using the gold theft as cover for his own elaborate robbery scheme. The letter continued. "The evidence in this box can destroy him, but only if it reaches honest hands. Take everything to Federal Marshal Robert Kane in the territorial capital. He's the only lawman I trust to handle this with integrity." But as Marcus gathered the documents, he heard Victor's voice getting dangerously close to the vault area and realized his hiding place was about to be discovered. Marcus stuffed Benjamin's documents inside his shirt alongside Samuel's ledger, just as Victor's boots echoed in the vault corridor. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. He was completely trapped. "Well, well," Victor's voice dripped with deadly satisfaction as he appeared in the doorway. "Marcus Stone, the 5-cent millionaire. I wondered when you'd appear here." Behind Victor stood Edgar Garrett, his face ashen with terror. "I'm sorry, Marcus. He forced me to reveal the truth about the key."
"It's not your fault, Edgar," Marcus replied, his hand moving slowly toward the documents concealed in his shirt. "Mr. Carver here has been deceiving everyone from the very beginning." Victor's eyes narrowed dangerously at the use of his real name. "So you discovered Benjamin's insurance policy. Clever old fool, keeping records that could destroy us all. Records proving you're not a government agent, Vincent Carver. Records showing you murdered 4 innocent men to cover up your own theft. Those men weren't innocent. They were greedy, just like you." Victor drew his pistol, keeping it low but ready to kill. "The difference is, I'm offering you an opportunity they never received. Partner with me, Stone? The gold is worth more than we could spend in 20 lifetimes." "Blood money," Marcus said with firm conviction, "built on murder and theft."
"Built on opportunity," Victor countered. "Samuel Morrison stole that gold from the government, but the government stole this land from someone else originally. There's no such thing as clean money in this territory." Marcus realized Victor was attempting to justify his crimes, probably to himself as much as anyone else, but the gun in Victor's hand made philosophical debates meaningless. "The documents, Stone. Hand them over and we can negotiate terms." Instead, Marcus pulled out the papers and held them high above his head. "These documents go to Federal Marshal Kane in the territorial capital, or they go up in flames right now. Your choice, Carver." Victor's face contorted with pure rage. "You fool! I've killed 4 men to protect this secret. What makes you think I won't kill you too?"
"Because murdering me here in front of Edgar would create a witness you can't silence. Too many people know I came to town today. My death would bring real federal marshals, not fake ones like you." For a long, tense moment, Victor weighed his options. Then his expression shifted, becoming almost amused. "You know what, Stone? You're absolutely right. I can't kill you here." He holstered his pistol and stepped aside with theatrical flourish. "Walk away. Take your documents to Marshal Kane. Tell him everything you've discovered." Marcus was stunned by the sudden surrender, but he didn't hesitate. He walked past Victor through the bank and out onto Main Street. Edgar Garrett followed, locking the bank behind them with trembling hands. "Why did he let you go?" Edgar whispered frantically. Marcus looked back at the bank where Victor stood silhouetted in the window, and suddenly, the horrifying truth hit him. "Because he's already moved the gold. All this time, while we were focused on the documents, he was systematically emptying the cash. The realization struck him like a physical blow. Victor had never cared about the evidence. He'd only needed time to steal the fortune. But as Marcus clutched the papers that would expose Victor's crimes, he realized something crucial. The gold might be gone, but justice could still be served. Vincent Carver would face trial for murder, and the families of his victims would finally have answers. 3 days later, federal marshals arrested Carver as he attempted to leave the territory with pack horses loaded with stolen gold. Benjamin Hawkins's meticulous records had provided everything needed for conviction on multiple counts of murder and theft. Marcus kept his 5-cent cabin, transforming it into a comfortable homestead. Sometimes visitors would ask about the strange story of the hidden treasure and the murderous conspiracy. But Marcus would just smile and say that some things were worth infinitely more than gold, like choosing to stand for justice when everything was on the line. The real treasure wasn't the fortune Samuel Morrison had stolen, but the courage to do what was right when faced with evil and corruption. Sometimes the smallest investment yields the greatest returns, not in gold, but in character.